Reincarnation is a rather common belief among Eastern philosophies. That being said, it tends to find its way into all of the media produced by Eastern artists, most visibly seen in anime and manga, to which it has its own genre known as isekai. Despite the fact that the Naruto series does indeed possess reincarnation, we've really only seen two people do it, Indra and Asura, as well as their incarnates, Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha. But even then, that's not entirely reincarnation, as Madara and Hashirama's souls were sent eventually to the Pure Land, with Hashirama having been inside of the Shinigami's belly for around 3 or 4 years. But on the topic of reincarnation, if Indra and Asura could do it via chakra alone, is it possible that anyone could do it? Welcome to the Amagi. Before we begin, only 25% of our viewers are subscribed, so if you're a fan of the video, please like and double check if you are subscribed, and with that out of the way, let's get into the video. That fateful night, told and retold 1,000 times before and 1,000 times more, Minato and Kushina prepared for their child. But as the mother of this babe gave birth, the father was fighting his own battle, keeping the rampaging chakra of the Nine Tails at bay with nothing but his own chakra and the sweat from his brow. As he did so, he began to wonder within himself how it was that Kushina could possibly do this 24/7. He knew she could give out, as was the case when she nearly killed him while trying to confess her love to him all that time ago. These days, they looked back on it and laughed. Minato even still had the scar from it. He used to joke with her and say that Cupid missed the first shot when she would comment on it, but at that time it was serious. And now that he was in this moment, holding the beast back himself, he began to think to himself that maybe it wasn't something to laugh about. Maybe it was a more serious matter than he was led to believe. At this moment, he gained a new respect for Jinchuriki everywhere. As the wailing of the child reached his ears, he knew that the worst was behind him. As Kushina caught her breath, Minato slowly found her trying to take back over with her chakra. He kept a steady stream going to help her keep her balance. She looked at him with tired eyes, but spoke as if what she just did was nothing. Her voice was hoarse, but her mind was sharp. Wow, that was impressive. I might make a good Jinchuriki out of you yet. Minato scoffed. No, never. I fear I don't have the discipline it takes to be a proper Jinchuriki. As the baby was cleaned, it was then presented to its mother. Or so fate should have seen it go. But a specter of the past, resurrected by a ghost, appeared in a world where it was not supposed to exist any longer. It took the baby up in its arms and threatened harm upon it unless the Nine Tails were given to it. Now, this was not a choice Minato was equipped to make. You could not ask the leader of a village to give up its most powerful weapon, and you couldn't ask a new father to give up the child he had just helped deliver. So Minato did the only thing he could, which was the one thing that lined up for both. Rushing the man with the strength of a warrior and the rage of a lion defending its cub. He utilized every ounce of his speed, moving so quickly that he let out a sonic boom. There was nothing in the world faster than Minato, save light itself. Or so he believed. The moment he hit the ground, he found his beloved wife as well as this specter from the past gone. He had somehow escaped Minato's grasp. That was impressive. But what was equally impressive was the fact that he managed to fill the baby's swaddling clothes with paper bombs. Minato noticed them only just in the nick of time. Utilizing his flying Raijin jutsu, he teleported back home. This was where he was planning to bring Kushina, a nice property off the main village, yet still within the protective barrier and its walls. It was a place where they could have a little privacy while raising an infant. They planned to return to their home in the village proper when the babe was old enough for solid foods, and now he was walking in alone. Well, not alone, with Naruto, but without Kushina, so it felt like he was alone. Coming to a large bed that could easily house 3, Minato let the child down. He would bring back its mother, and then this night, the 3 of them would all sleep together in this bed. But first, he had to bring her back. The good news was he had thought ahead and had planted the flying Raijin seal on her 8 trigram seal at a point after their marriage. She had been teaching him all of the hidden techniques of the Uzumaki, and as his final test, she had tasked him with incorporating his own flying Raijin seal into her seal without disrupting the flow of chakra, or negating the seal's ability to do its job properly. He thought it was an unnecessary risk when he could put the seal elsewhere. Yes, he had many ideas for that, but no, she dictated that it should go there to prove that he had learned everything she had to teach him, letting her know that he was truly worthy of calling himself an Uzumaki, the same as she was capable of calling herself a Namikaze by learning all the techniques he called signatures, including the flying Raijin and the Rasengan. He would teleport to her with this seal he had altered and found her tied up and left to die. As soon as he inspected the seal, he knew that someone had jailbroken it, having shredded the sealing formula to ribbons, like a child trying to get to the contents of a present on Christmas Day. It hurt him to seal it, knowing that this seal was often painful when tampered with. He broke her free. That's when she told him, "Nine Tails escaped." She lifted a finger and pointed in the direction of the village. Minato hadn't noticed it before, but a massive creature the size of a mountain was standing in the village's heart. He looked back at her, knowing that without this thing she would die. It was then that the masked man from before appeared. Minato lay his wife down and turned to him. "You really messed up, pal." The two would fight, but Minato would quickly prove to be the superior. Having witnessed his wife in this state and knowing that his village was under attack, Minato didn't play around. He didn't have the time to. With one quick, decisive blow, he took out the man's arm, causing it to slough off to his feet. The man, realizing he was never any match for Minato, or at least he wasn't yet, would then teleport away. Minato would spit toward the man and then return to his wife to find her barely conscious. He would quickly teleport her back to their home where he would lay her with Naruto. "Here, rest, play with the baby, keep yourself occupied. I'm going to get your beast back. Then when I seal it back into you, we're all gonna snuggle. Just think of it that way. The same way you stabbing me all those years ago turned into something to laugh at. This will too." He kissed her cheek and headed out. With the benefit of his flying Raijin, no place was too far, nor was it ever too slow. Standing atop the carving of his own head, he looked out to the village as if challenging the beast outright. Oh yes, he was going to challenge it. Challenge it to take his joy away. "Beast!" he shouted. The Nine Tails looked in his direction with a sneer. It roared at him, but for a moment Minato almost swore he heard it say, "Challenge accepted." He ran down the mountainside as the nine-tailed beast swept its massive claw across the landscape, throwing earth and building alike into the air. As Minato hit the ground, he just barely had enough time to dodge the incoming debris. The beast prepared for another volley. Minato rushed forward so quickly that he left a trail of electricity behind him. This was how he got his name, and was how he was going to have the Nine-Tails remember him. As the second wave of buildings came down, he bobbed and weaved with inhuman ability, stopping on a dime and bursting in another direction like an arcing bolt of plasma. He got close enough and reached out to touch Kurama. "Tag, you're it!" Suddenly, the two of them teleported out of the village proper and back to the house. However, Kurama was crafty and had planned for this. Sadly enough, just as Kushina knew her husband well, the beast inside knew him well too. And knowing that he would be teleported, he charged an attack to retaliate without any slowdown as soon as they were on the other side. This resulted in a roar so powerful that the concussive force leveled the area around it. This, in turn, blew away the Namikaze household. Kushina and the baby went flying. She tried to catch it midair but failed. The baby landed away from her. Despite her condition, she stood and raced to it. She lifted the baby up into her arms, but to her horror, it was not breathing. In a panic, she raced out to the battlefield. "Minato! Minato! Naruto isn't breathing!" she cried out. Minato turned back for a moment, but there was nothing he could do. He needed to seal the beast away, quickly. Then they could think of something. "Kushina, are you ready to take the beast back?" he called out. She shook her head. "Minato, I'm already too far gone. You can't save me. But if you seal the beast into Naruto, you can save him." Minato looked back. "Kushina, this is no time to tell lies. I know you can survive this," he told her. She shook her head. "I swear it on Naruto's life, Minato. Even if you seal it into me now, I'll still die." He was appalled by this answer. She looked to him. "Please, save Naruto. The tailed beast infusion will restart his heart and maybe bring him back to life." Minato roared to the skies in frustration. "Fine, get it ready." He returned to battle against Kurama. Kushina began setting it up. She knelt down beside Naruto as he laid upon a little bed-shaped altar. She kissed his head. "This will save you, Naruto. This will save you." She then began to perform the sealing ritual. As she did so, Kurama sensed what was going on. "No, I will not be sealed again." He knocked Minato to the side and began to charge. She couldn't deal with that now. She needed to finish the seal no matter what. No matter if it killed her, she needed to finish it. She heard the beast's footsteps behind her, the thudding of each titanic paw as it dug a new crevice into the earth and stones. But then there's a sharp squish, the sound of crunching bones as the keratin of a claw passed through. But it was not Kushina who'd been stabbed. She looked back for a moment to see Minato single-handedly holding the Nine-Tails back with his own body. The massive beast was held by the claw. It was a miracle that it didn't tear Minato in half and just keep going. But in all truth, it might have simply been Minato's willpower, and the pure force of his chakra that held the beast back. Kushina wanted to scream. She wanted to cry, but all the same she realized that she was currently feeling the same thing Minato was. At least they'd be together in death, even if it meant leaving Naruto behind. She turned back to complete the ritual, and as soon as she did, the hand of the Shinigami appeared and gripped the Nine Tails, ripping it through the hole it had made in Minato's chest and then down into the baby, where it would be locked behind a swirling seal, identical to the one Kushina had on herself, but perhaps even stronger. The moment she did, however, Minato fell to the ground, lifeless, his eyes half rolled up in his head. Kushina lamented that they could share no final words together and kissed his blood-stained blonde hair before having her soul ripped out by the Shinigami. Now here is the tragedy of this tale. While Naruto's heart did indeed start beating again, the soul of Naruto had left long ago. While Kushina did not believe this, the Shinigami had known it from the start, and as such, following her instructions, it knew that the seal she was using could not work on a deceased host. So it decided to listen to the secret desires of her heart, which was a desire to save her husband however she could. And considering that his body had been totaled, the Shinigami had decided that since there was a perfectly good shell here without a soul, that maybe he would simply reincarnate Minato by putting his soul into the child's body. That was what had happened. When gripping the chakra and soul of Kurama, the Shinigami had grabbed Minato's as well, and pulled both into the shell, causing it to burst back to life with a wail and a cry. Alone and with nobody, the newly reincarnated Minato kicked and grasped helplessly into the night, the mind and body of an infant regressing him back to the earlier stages of life, locking who he truly was behind a gate of age. Hiruzen would not long after find the baby and assume that Naruto had survived. Minato would be taken to the hospital where they would officially give him the name Naruto. Minato slept through this. He was tired. The babe's body was not nearly as hardy as his own. It had been hurt indeed, but the brunt of the damage done had been healed by the Nine Tails' energy as it sought to repair the damage quickly so as to not die immediately. Though freedom might occur with the death of the host, death was still something that an immortal being such as Kurama feared. So the beast quickly repaired all of the major damage. Minato had no grasp on time or anything. He hardly had the faculties to think. Language skills, everything he was before had been confiscated, and he'd been left as a bare-bones form of himself. His eyes could barely open, he was so tired, but when they did, all he saw was a blurry image, like staring through water. The first few years of his life were unremarkable, as he was treated just as a Jinchuriki of the beast that nearly destroyed the village, with hesitation, contempt, and an overwhelming urge to see the situation just go away. And so, as soon as he was able to think for himself, he did. By the time Minato was living by himself, he was starting to grow conscious of the fuzzy images in his head. Thoughts and dreams too vivid to be imagination. It had to be something else, but what was it? He went to the academy, and while there, he found that he somehow already knew the things that they were teaching him. It seemed like child's play, but then again, he was a child, and why would he think it anything less? All of these contradictions in his mind really began to pick up as time passed along. The village seemed to revile him for some reason, a reason Minato couldn't put his finger on but somehow understood. He didn't much care that his village disliked him. He simply wanted them to be happy, and so he was always there with a helping hand should they require it, even if they were ungrateful to have it thereafter. Upon returning home, he felt empty. He felt like something was just missing. Nothing physical, of course. He tended to get whatever he wanted from Hiruzen. If it was a new Shinobi Station 5 with 2 dual Shuriken 5 controllers, sure, he got it. If it was the new Kagemasa Blood and Fog DVD special, he got that too. He wanted for nothing, but deep down, none of these material pleasures fulfilled him. There was a hole in his identity that he could not quite fill. So he decided to go on a journey of self-discovery to find out what that was, to explain all the weird occurrences he was experiencing, and the feeling that something was wrong. And so he would find a quiet place, sit down, and meditate. He would begin to search the deepest parts of his soul, looking for answers. He hadn't expected to find something else sitting there. Coming upon a cage, he found it. The Nine Tails. "Whoa, what are you?" he asked flatly. The beast's eyes, glowing like embers in the night, gazed down at him. It was so much taller than he, even when it was lying flat. But for some reason, he felt as though it were originally far bigger. It's like what he remembered was it being bigger, despite the fact that he wasn't even quite sure what he was looking at. "What are you?" he asked it again. The beast rushed and pressed against the gate with a deafening clang of flesh and bone colliding with adamantine bars. Its claws shot through the bar in hopes of rubbing Minato out of existence like a tiny bug. It growled and snarled at him as the claws came just feet from his face. "Well, now I know where not to stand," he said as he saw the indentation carved into the ground. He looked back to the cage. Given the nature of your claw, I'd suspect you're not human and just a feral monster. So why was I expecting you to answer my question?
I hate you,
a deep guttural growl said. Minato was confused. Wait, you can speak? But almost as soon as that question entered his head, it was gone. Why do you hate me? The eyes burned even brighter with rage now.
Do you not remember why? Have you forgotten what you've done to me?
Minato nodded. I mean, honestly, it was the truth.
Then allow me to jog your memory.
Kurama forced Minato down memory lane by awakening his old memories, supplementing them with Kurama's own to validate what was true and what was fantasy. All of this information rushed through Minato's mind at once, and all the more the rest of his memories came flooding back. Like a dam letting loose its water, memories, an entire lifetime came rushing back to him. Minato was living an entire life in the span of a few moments. When he came back to his senses, Kurama was now lurking toward the back of the cage.
That's why I hate you.
Minato was shocked and appalled, and his mind was racing faster than a speeding bullet. He didn't have the constitution for this, not now. His identity had been shattered. Only now did he realize that his mind had been broken into pieces and hidden away. He was living 2 lifetimes at once. Who he was as Naruto and who he was as Minato were entangling, and he wasn't sure what to do with this information. So he left his subconscious immediately. Back in his bedroom, he quickly stood from his meditative position and fled from it with a gasp, turning back to look at the area where he'd been sitting only moments earlier, as if something had touched him. But no, it was all due to his experience within his own mind. He stumbled to the bathroom, where he felt he might throw up. He had gone into his own head, searching for answers, and, well, he'd found them. But they were all a confusing, jumbled mess, all of which were competing with his current set of memories. His mind was unable to set those memories on a 4D linear path. They all seemed to be existing at the same time. He tried to calm himself down and stop his mind from rejecting the new memories. He had gone looking for answers, not to have himself driven insane by what he found. He would go to the sink and splash his face with cool water, and as he did, he felt his nerves calming down. It felt like a jack-in-the-box. His memories held behind a box that he found himself cranking, and without warning, it all jumped out at him. Now, to protect himself, he needed to put the jack back into the box for a second, trying to push all the memories he didn't recognize away for a moment. All he needed to do was examine each memory one by one, and surely his subconscious would be able to set up a timeline of events. Calm now, he began to gaze back at the most recent memory unlocked for him. He saw a woman with red hair. That's my wife. Her name was Kushina. He followed the memory. Oh, I became a father. I was so happy. He then saw the masked man take up the baby. His grip on the counter grew tighter. I rescued it though. It was safe. He was then shocked. Wait, Kushina's gone? Where did she go? The memories played out until he reached his home during his battle with the Ninetales. He suddenly heard a voice shout out to him, and it sounded like Kushina's voice. Minato! Minato! Naruto isn't breathing! It was suddenly then that Minato's mind frayed for a moment. 2 massive questions with continuity flashed into his mind, which left him on the ground, gripping his head. His breathing quickened as he tried to make sense of this. First off, it seemed as though he was saddened by the death of his own son, but at the same time, that son was him. How could this be? What was this? He felt the searing pain of having his lungs and organs ripped to shred by the Ninetales' claw. Gripping at his chest, Minato fell back, unable to catch his breath. He cried out from the pain. It was all a phantom pain now, he wasn't truly experiencing it, but the memory of it was sealed into his mind, and it felt as if it were as real as the ground he was laying upon. As the pain and adrenaline balanced out, Minato could feel his senses returning. He witnessed the face of a Shinigami, its hand reaching out toward him. He suddenly felt as if he were ripped out, entangled with a flame of fire, ready to consume his very soul, and like that, he was sealed into the child, the last thing his eyes witnessing being his own body falling lifelessly to the ground. Then there was darkness, followed by a bright light and a fog-concealed face. Minato lay there for a second as his body began to regain control, accepting the memory. He struggled to sit up before standing, and as he did, he leaned on the cabinet where he looked at himself in the mirror. Tears began to roll down his cheeks. Kushina! It was then that the love of a husband to a wife was restored to him, and then ripped away again at the knowledge that she had been killed, her soul devoured by the Shinigami. Kushina! His voice uttered through a higher-pitched squeak that signaled the loss of control of his emotions. He stumbled back to his room, emotions draining his physical strength. Falling into the bed, he lay there, realizing that the only reason why he was alive now was because Kushina had died to seal his soul. But that was only half the pain. He realized that his own newborn son had perished that day, with Minato's own soul merely inhabiting the shell of his son's body. Looking at his tiny hands, Minato lost control again, and wept openly and loudly for the child he had just barely met. Hiruzen walked from the streets into the building's stairwell. He began to ascend. He had received a call from the landlord of the building that some of their tenants had sent in complaints. According to the landlord, the people in the apartments surrounding Naruto's had heard a loud disturbance coming from within, to which the landlord said they could only describe as a child screaming and crying. Unsettled, they called the landlord, who would then call Hiruzen since he was the one financially responsible for the apartment. Hiruzen was on his way there now. He knew Naruto, and knew that he was a kind and mild-mannered young man who didn't like to cause issues for anyone. Rarely visibly sad, if Naruto were crying now, something must be wrong. For this issue, Hiruzen was sure the boy had hurt himself somehow and needed help, so he was coming as fast as he could to the apartment. He stepped up to the door and beat upon it 3 times. "Naruto! Naruto, if you're there, open this door!" After a second passed, Hiruzen knocked another 3 times, this time louder. "Naruto!" When there was no response, Hiruzen began to feel as though his heart were going to stop. He pulled out a spare key and unlocked the door. He rushed through, his strides longer than usual, his movement with the vigor of a man half his age. "Naruto!" He didn't see any sign of him. He moved to the bedroom to see him curled up in bed. Hiruzen rushed to his side and rolled him over on his back. He saw tears drying upon the boy's face. He quickly began to check him over for any injuries. It was these actions that caused Naruto's eyes to open. Hiruzen saw this and sighed in relief. "Why didn't you answer me when I was calling you?" Naruto just turned away from Hiruzen and returned to laying on his side. "Are you okay?" "No," the voice of the child stated. Once again, Hiruzen's BPM rose. "What's wrong?" Naruto managed to sit up on the bed. "Kushina," he said. Hiruzen was struck by the statement of the woman's name. "Where did you hear that name?" Hiruzen asked. He specifically had hidden Naruto's parents from him, as well as the entirety of his origin for fear that the emotional outburst might weaken the seal and allow Kurama to escape. He had also sworn the entire village to silence. When Hiruzen figured out who told Naruto this, there would be hell to pay. Naruto turned to look at Hiruzen. "Kushina Uzumaki. Minato. Naruto." Hiruzen sat down on the bed and put his hands on Naruto's shoulders. "Where did you hear these names? Who told you this?" The red and bloodshot eyes of Hiruzen's young charge looked up into his. "I remembered it." That was impossible. Nobody could remember events from the day they were born. Memory wasn't even proven to start reliably forming until the age of 2, so the concept that a child could remember their own birth was ludicrous. Yet Naruto insisted. But what he said next blew him away. "It was me. I was the one fighting." Hiruzen was confused. Naruto had the beast sealed inside of him, but he was not physically fighting the Ninetales. Naruto spoke again. "Hiruzen, I'm Minato. Minato Namikaze." Hiruzen smiled and shook his head. "You're just confused, Naruto, that's all." Naruto then said something. "You were disgraced after ending the war with a peace treaty, a war we were going to win. That was when I was elected to be Hokage. You petitioned me personally before the Fire Daimyo. Do you remember what I said when you told me? I said, I'll do my best, but don't be surprised if I drop the ball on it." Hiruzen was shocked. This was something Minato had said to him in private, long before Naruto had even been conceived. Hiruzen sat there. "Minato?" The boy nodded. "But how is that possible?" Hiruzen asked. Minato looked down at his son's tiny hands, the hands he had inherited. "I'm not sure why, but when Kushina went to seal the Ninetales into the baby, it took me with the beast. I think it was because Naruto was..." Minato covered his mouth as the tears began to form again. Hiruzen began putting things together. The Shinigami could have easily done this. The technique used, the Reaper Death Seal, was not a technique that one simply created. No, the technique was a ritual that summoned the god of death. The Shinigami had its own mental capacity and its own personality. If Kushina was trying to seal the beast into a dead body, it's possible that the Shinigami had decided to rectify this doomed sealing by giving new life to the body, including the soul of a living person to survive within the child. And given that the only people there it could use to fulfill this duty were Kushina and Minato, the Shinigami could have only chosen Minato, as Kushina's soul was already forfeit. The boy that Hiruzen could now recognize as none other than Minato sat there with his hands over his mouth, tears streaming from his eyes, body shaking. He hadn't seen Minato like this in a long time. He had never seen Minato in this emotional state though, not even when he was a child. He had never seen his successor so helpless, so vulnerable. He pulled Minato into a hug. "It's okay, Minato. Your child is okay. No doubt he's being cared for by my wife in heaven. Buako was always a tough and strong woman, and she held beliefs that the strong should protect the weak, so Naruto's in good hands." Minato just sat there, staring off blankly from his watering eyes. "Kushina should be with him. Kushina shouldn't be relegated to the Shinigami. They should both be alive right now. I failed them." Hiruzen shook his head. "No, you didn't fail them, Minato." Minato looked up at Hiruzen. "No, I failed them. If I had been faster, I could have saved them." Hiruzen wasn't sure how to comfort him now. He was tortured by memories he should not have sought for. "Minato, I can't say anything that would bring them back, but I can say this. You came back to us for a reason, and whatever that reason is, I'm sure it will prove to be worthy of the sacrifices you've made. But you have to have faith. I'm certain there's a way to free Kushina's soul and allow her to go to heaven where Naruto is. And then, when your life comes to an end, you'll also be reunited with them. So try not to focus on what you couldn't do, but instead focus on what you can do. And right now that's freeing Kushina, and finding out for what purpose you've returned to us." Hiruzen stayed with Minato for about an hour before returning to the Hokage's residence. Minato would spend the rest of his night trying to decipher his memories, even though some of them he knew could only bring him pain, such as the death of Obito and Rin. He knew that these memories were his birthright, and so he began to focus on unlocking all these memories of his past, forming them into one timeline. The day after, he decided to do some more looking into at least freeing the soul of Kushina from the Death Seal. As he studied it, however, a news story broke that caught his eye. Massacred, the Uchiha clan comes to an end at the hand of one of its own. Minato was shocked. He had served beside so many Uchiha clan members during the Third Shinobi World War. He considered Fugaku to be one of his closest friends. The shock only grew when word reached that the perpetrator was Fugaku's own son, Itachi Uchiha. No way! Itachi did this? That's impossible! Itachi was such a kind and sweet boy. I won't lie and say he wouldn't kill, but he was a pacifist at heart. If he killed anyone, it was on orders and for a bigger reason. It was because Minato had known Itachi so well that the story of a rogue shinobi seeking only power and to prove himself was unreal to him. Itachi was not a prideful sort. On the contrary, he was very humble. None of this made sense. Minato needed to get to the bottom of this. As he thought about all the different things that happened over the past few years, from his reincarnation due to this masked man's interference, as well as his need to help Kushina get free from the Reaper Death Seal, and now the Uchiha clan massacre, he knew that fate had likely set things in motion to help him solve these issues as they came. Knowing this, Minato set out to discover the truth behind his circumstances, and the circumstances that the village set it in. The yellow flash was back, and soon the whole world would know it. And that's where I'm gonna call this one for the time being. I'm not gonna lie, the concept of Minato reincarnating as Naruto was one that I've been waiting to do for a while. With Minato becoming Naruto, but maintaining everything that made him who he was, we are set to see a truly overpowered character. And while his body may have weakened a little due to the new form he's taken, there's no doubt that his experience and wisdom will carry him through. I hope you all enjoyed this video, because I know I certainly did. Be sure to leave a comment below and tell us about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell to be notified when more videos like this release. Until next time, peace out.